A couple of days after, users started to complain that the chatbot is no longer working. And I was panicking in my office. Like, seriously, what is wrong? Is the service down? What I learned is that they used all the credits. People were using it so much that the monthly amount of credits that I was paying for was used in a couple of days. And this is where I went like, we might be onto something because people are really engaging.
Welcome back to Horizons Podcast, where I convince marketing leaders to spill their secrets for the rest of us. Today, I'm very excited to be sitting down with Maja Voje. Maja is the author of Go-to-Market Strategist and founder of the consultancy Growth Lab, both of which build on her experience with over 400 launches across hundreds of companies. I'm very excited to dive deep into go-to-market with you today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, Nate, first, sincere congrats. You are literally the first native English speaker that pronounced my name correctly. How on earth did you do it?
I try to do my research. I do my best.
Excellent. That always helps. So yeah, totally glad to be on your podcast. You know how it is. Everybody who's listening to this is super into the nitty gritty, into AI right now, and just like seeing this organic reach falling so much that it's about time to exchange what's working, what's really working at the moment. And let's hop on this adventure together.
That is actually exactly where I wanted to start. You've written about how the things that worked to build unicorns a decade ago do not work to build unicorns today. What are the shifts that you've seen in go-to-market, and what are the things that are still consistent?
Okay, Nate, I did some prep for our interview as well. So I actually discovered that like I got really hooked into this go-to-market idea like 8 years ago when we were launching a Kickstarter project. As stupid as this sounds, I was really impressed by the idea that we could make like 3K in 48 hours. That was a lot of money for me back then. And I was just like, wow, you could be using digital marketing to selling to people that you don't know from all around the world. And ever since that was a no way back from me. It was an entry drug. I'm just like hooked on this right now. Like the how we saw go to market back then is really naive. So it was just like finding these digital channels, like doing a little bit of Facebook ads, doing a little bit of hacking in communities, and so like geopolitics will work out, fingers crossed. Right now, we are seeing this in a much more holistic manner. So I get still like the instances from the teams when they say to me, my go-to-market strategy is LinkedIn. And I'm like, great. Who's your ICP? What's the positioning like? What's the pricing? So eventually we'll get there. But what I've been seeing again and again is this really integrated approach to go to market, which is interdisciplinary. So no longer just like the heavy lifting of marketing and digital channels, but like product managers being heavily included into the operation, product marketers, and even founders in early stages, right? So it's definitely gaining more and more and more and more importance. The other shift that I have seen is that companies are no longer mistaking for the launch itself, for the launch per se, but it's already like I'm working with a lot of corps, right? And since you are from the enterprise environment as well, you know that like products happen in all different life stages of companies. So every company all the time is going to market in a way. So this is like a very, very, very interesting field to explore because as the company is maturing, so first, of course, you have to secure product market fit because if your product is not delivering value to the people that are using it, what on earth are we doing here? So the second thing is that we are trying to unlock this repeatable and scalable go-to-market motion. That is like a set of channels, a set of tactics, playbooks that will repeatedly bring us customers so that we no longer have to worry about where our next customer is coming from, but there are some system in place, some really cool standard operating procedure that create our revenue machines. And last but not least, we are talking about scaling so much. And there was a person who asked me on LinkedIn the other day, what can go wrong when you are entering a new market, a new geographical market? My answer was everything. That's literally an entirely new GTM. These are the things that you still have to figure it out. So long story short, I think that we are understanding go-to-market very holistically now, apart from people in Meta X. So a lot of them still don't know what go-to-market is. And when we would test it, like speed testing, launch, like 100 steps how to launch things versus 100 steps how to go to market, launch perform much better. So who am I to judge?
I love how even in your first question, it so clearly have these frameworks that break down a very complicated and sometimes difficult to understand subject into something that anyone can digest. I'd love to, in the course of the next hour, really break that down together. But before we dive into that, I just want to go back to that first Kickstarter. What was the Kickstarter and what worked in that initial Kickstarter?
Okay, so 8 years ago, we were there in one basement in Slovenia. There was a bunch of us, technology enthusiasts, and we wanted to make a gadget. Little did we know that hardware is very hard and everything what could possibly go wrong will go wrong. We were naive back then. So we invented this mount, how to put like a cell phone in the car and use it safely. That was the idea. The product was called Blue Jay, and we done like a bunch of research. We worked with like industrial designers, and like we got these cool offers from everybody in China who could be making this project. And we thought that it is very solid operation, right? So we kicked up the marketing machine and just like generated this kind of crowdfunding funds. But at the end, we discovered that the product is not feasible to be made at this price point. So we had to return back the money. It was a great marketing lesson, though, and we paid back the money, which is important. But long story short, it was just like the first time in my career when I had to win against all odds, right? So we were there on a shoestring budget. Like there was nothing to it. Nobody had like hardware experience before, but still we somehow managed in order to pull off this operation. And that has kind of become a theme of my career, win against all the odds. And I think it's very applicable to the age of AI as well.
Yes. And you mentioned as we were emailing before the interview that you believe any SaaS company that has product market fit to any degree can achieve 1,000 or more paid members through free levers, which I'm very excited to dive into.
Yes, correct.
Before we come to that part, I'd love to start at the very beginning. So let's say a founding team comes to you, they have an idea. Where do you start with them in terms of identifying product market fit, viability of the idea, all that good stuff?
Okay. So another anecdote from the field, I was working with a VC. So they have like a bunch of teams that I was coaching, and we had like a very holistic go-to-market workshop. So we covered ICP, we covered positioning, then like go-to-market motions and like pricing. So I'm not usually very active on the product side because people usually come to me with product decisions that are pretty much taken. So what was really, really interesting about this one was that somebody complained that we spent 70% of the time determining ICP. But this is how things should be, right? Because every other decision that you are making in go-to-market evolves around your idea of who should benefit from this operation. Let's call it operation. It can be a product or a service for now. So I always like to envision products as this bridge of value transfer. So here am I, a very scrappy user right now in the present that sucks a little bit. And here is where I want to be. This is my ideal future state. This is me being 10 kilos lighter before the summer, preferably with no exercise. And then your product is a bridge how to deliver this promised future to the customer. Right. And this is why our ways of value delivery, the value definition itself, the way how we communicate this value and everything else is like literally dependent on your ICP selection. And there is another quirk to it that we will talk about in this podcast as well. That like spoilers, but your ideal customer is probably not the first 50 customers that you will attract. But nevertheless, this is where things can get terribly wrong, right? So when we said that like getting free users for AI products is not difficult, literally any team that I have been working with has managed to do it like for free. We can always spend money later on once we learn a thing or two about our free users. But my go-to playbook usually is just like go and post on the social media groups relevant to your target audience. It might be Reddit. Reddit can be super nice, but you have to do like a lot of trial and errors in order to get this right. It can be Hacker News. It can be, I don't know, YouTube. You tell, I haven't done YouTube yet. It can be done with Google Ads. So one of my teams spent like $200 on Google Ads in order to validate the initial traction for their AI product. It was a symptom checker and like LinkedIn viral post. As retarded as this will sound, but like these things are working at the moment. Will they still be working in 6 months? After you listen to this podcast, yeah, probably not, or like to the lesser extent than not, because after we are talking about these hot techniques, eventually get diminishing returns because everybody's starting using it. But I do believe that like the product is really good at value delivering, that you shouldn't find it very difficult to gain early traction. And from early traction, this is a critical point now. I like to reverse engineer my ICP because the other mistake that I see in practice a lot is that these personas, these like ideal customer profiles, are figments of imagination, for the lack of words that I cannot use on this podcast. So the thing is that like the team sits together and they literally invent this imagination archetype, like Hans from Germany that drives Volkswagen and loves accounting and ski. And this does not add up. Like these are the people that do not exist in real life. And even if you could somehow hook up the Hanses with Volkswagens in order to give your injection molding software a try, it doesn't mean that they will retain with the product. It doesn't mean that they will pay for product. So the only way how I'm comfortable doing any sort of ICP work is by reverse engineering the actual traction. Because you know how it is. How can I know who is my ICP if I'm here in my basement figuring out the product? No, I have to go out there and try. That's the whole point.
Yes. And for anyone who's listening and doesn't know what ICP is, I think you said it's
Sorry.
the ideal customer profile.
That's right.
And you've spoken at length before about ECP, which is, I think, the early customer profile. What is the difference between these two? How would you think about this?
Yeah, thank you, Nate, for this awesome question. It's less of a thing that I love to invent new acronyms, which I really don't because I speak a very simple and relatable language, but it's more of taking the pressure off, right? So when you are starting out, your product is probably not perfect just yet. And you don't have the required social proof, meaning case studies, use cases that like ideal customers would require in order to give you a fair fighting chance. So you have to start lower, smaller, with like a different type of audience. And there are 4 characteristics of this type of early adopter, which I love to call early customer profile. But the focus here is on customers. So people who are paying money to use your products, not like people that you get for free from Discord. Okay. We have to understand this differentiation. So imagine this scenario. Like I'm developing a marketing automation tool with AI, of course. It has to have AI, otherwise I won't be successful. It could be like catering different types of business. And ideally, I could be inspired that people from PepsiCo, for example, will use my product one day. But so far, I have a very limited product functionalities and like I would never ever pass the compliance that big enterprises have. So maybe, just maybe, I have a better fighting chance if I go and talk to smaller business owners, maybe from technology sector at the moment, because yes, one day I could be achieving my PepsiCo, Mercedes-Benz dreams, whatever inspired me in order to develop this technology. But for now, I need to cater a different type of market segment that matches 4 criteria. First, burning pain point, meaning that they are just like, where were you yesterday? I need this now. Where do we start? I need this. The second one is willingness to pay. Remember, customer. So these people have to say, shut up and take my money. They don't like, maybe I can budget it for next quarter or something like that. That's trouble. This is not your ICP, right? The third thing is that like this type of early customer needs to be like somehow related to the idea of where you want to go later on. Because with early customers, you are providing proof, you're providing evidence that will help you climb towards your vision of ideal customer profile. So for example, if I want to sell stuff to Nate, who works in enterprise, and I pitch him that I'm working with like 1,000 contractors in Australia, Nate will probably be not as impressed with my traction and I will have problems selling to him. This needs to be relatable, right? Kind of adjacency to the ideal customer profile that you have in mind. And the entry barriers in opposite world, like your proximity to the segment, you need to be able to sell to significant part of them in the next 3 or 6 months, because that's usually the lifeline that you have. If you go and speak with some airlines, for example, that have this decision-making process of 2 years, that's not a good shot for you. You need to have like the knowledge of the language that your ECP, ideal early customer profile, is speaking, and you need to have some sort of access to their communities, to their professional association. Just like I would do such a shitty job as a marketer if I went and just like tried to sell something to people who are working in the concrete industry, for example, because I have no idea what they need and how they speak and where they hang out, right? So proximity is needed as well. Hope that was not too long, but if you haven't noticed, I'm really passionate about this subject.
And now a word from our sponsor. It's me. I'm actually not taking any sponsors in season 1, but I just wanted to say thank you for listening. It's been such a joy recording these episodes, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I have. If you would like to support the podcast, the single most impactful thing you can do is leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening. This will help new people discover the podcast. And if you have someone in your life who's passionate about marketing, send this their way. They'll probably love diving into these insider tactics and stories. With that, back to the conversation. It's amazing. And I love how well you broke it down, how detailed you got. I'm curious for an example. Like, let's take something like Loom, the screen sharing company.
Perfect. Let's do Tela. That's a European competitor, and it's a little bit more relatable.
I love it. Let's do that. What would you say should be their ECP, their early customer profile? And then how would that shift into their ideal customer profile over time?
Love it. So Tela is a different version of Loom. They are quite aggressive in terms of the communication, how they are better than Loom, but this is how the challenger should act in the early stages, and nobody will judge them for doing it. So they're a Y Combinator backed start, right? And they got their first 20 customers from just like selling to startups just as they are. So there was a little bit of romance going on there, like a little bit of sympathy, how hard it is to start. So these people are more likely to give you a chance. Later on, they transition to what could be called like SME sector in tech, right? But tech, because like when you are searching for early adopters, people usually from the other tech industries, we are much more tolerant to imperfect products, and we are very generous with feedback because guess what? Been there, done that. I got you. I really want to be there for you this early stage. So yeah, this was this momentum of going from there, let's say phone book clients, from the people that they have actually met in real life, towards an underserved segment for Loom. Because if you think about Loom's product development, like Loom is a giant conglomerate right now, and would they really care about my feedback? Would they care what Maja Voje thinks about their product? For sure not, because I'm paying them $20 a month and they don't want to deal with me as an individual. And they're part of stats, feeding their data intelligence, it's fine. But in early stages of this development, like Tela's founder, he literally talks with each and every one of his early adopters. So when you sign up for Tela, which is really, really, really cool because it produces the link to the Tela video, and when you share it around, it's kind of a growth loop that we will talk about today as well, right? But nevertheless, after you register for software, you first get like a onboarding sequence. So here is how to use Tela. This is how we're better than Loom. This is your reverse trial, 7 days left in order to keep your videos alive and continue with this editing process. And then after you convert, he wants to talk with you. Like Grant invites you personally to speak with him and just like listens to you, not knowing how to use his product in most cases. And this is just like such a wonderful red carpet treatment, white glove treatment, however you want to call it, of early adopters. Now, Will Tel Aviv forever talking to Maja Voje on this world who are sharing video links on LinkedIn? Of course not. I mean, eventually they will move up market and they will launch these enterprise packages where the real money will probably be made up for the company. But for now, we're here and I still have the access to the founder that I will probably lose in the next quarter or two. That's the story.
And that's a really interesting example because you mentioned the 4 principles that you need, one of which was a real pain point. In a case where you have Loom that sort of does the job and you have something that does that but better, how do you identify, like if I'm a founder, I feel like I don't see a real pain. How would I identify the audience where there is a real pain, even though Loom does a lot? There's something that they're missing.
That's an interesting one. So I would start with complaints. For example, my deal breaker was that whenever you are like sharing this video publicly on Loom, you cannot remove like very easily this cut down. And I wasted a bunch of time recording like online courses with this Loom timer on. It was really awkward. So my design couldn't help much. And this is a very good indication. I was like reviewing the product as well and being very vocal about this on social media, that this is like no longer something that I would very much enjoy using for my specific use cases. And this is how I first got introduced to them. I actually like saw this cool video layout, not this like Loom video that looks nothing special to it, but a wonderfully designed frame where like a person was speaking, the head was bigger and I wanted it. And I literally went and like asked this person, how did you make it? How did you make this? This is how I initially learned about Stila, right? And again, like we can return to the growth loop of this as well, because it is a wonderful mechanism how to get users for free. But like if there is an early pain point, people are out there complaining about stuff on Reddit, on Trustpilot, and the first things that I would like search for it naturally are there. And I can ask my GPT or open AI model of your choice to help me figure it out based on like identifying like the competition and just instructing it, just prompting it towards like, who's the underserved market here? Like there are references that they are publishing probably, like there are review sites, there are like social media boards. This information is out there. You can get it.
And if I'm, let's say, a marketer or a founder who's listening to this and thinks this all sounds wonderful, but I barely have time to keep up with the things I'm already doing. You've talked about the curse of intelligence that overcomplicates go-to-market. What would be a minimum viable go-to-market?
So I have this wonderful template. It's for free. You can download it on my website. And it's literally like abstraction of all the 6 elements of go-to-market strategy as I define them. It has a very clear action plan, how to achieve your objectives. I love to center people around the objectives because when you know your objective, yes, you can easily start deciding what is mission critical. If your mission critical is to close 50 clients this quarter, probably doing works like going and speaking in some sort of like high school, if that's not your target audience, like it makes this decision easier. I mean, you can still do it, but just consider it as a hobby or giving back. It's not like a mission critical activity for your business. And as long as we can align on just like what is a non-negotiable here, what has to be true in order for this business to move forward, the rest becomes not easy, but easier. I mean, there are still a bunch of distractions going on. I get jealous on LinkedIn on a daily basis because I have this weird feeling that everybody around me is like moving faster than I am, especially in the AI world, right? So it's still on. The pressure is still on. But then I take a very deep breath. I said, is it mission critical for me to try another AI tool right now? Or should I try to close another sales call? And things come into the perspective. I hope that was like kind of semi-helpful because on this like Power Hour template, this is me. Like I was drawing this 300 times when I was doing these consultations on the spot, like on the field with the teams. And this is like, I think everything that you need to comprehend and decide on when it comes to go to market on a single page. Now, not so easy part is stick to these decisions because a lot of times due to FOMO and our indecisiveness sometimes, or just like fear of losing something or whatever the psychological drivers here are, It's not easy, but hey, if it was easy, anybody could do it. The case is that you're very special as an entrepreneur.
True, true. And that Power Hour template is incredible. I actually have it open in another tab right now. I highly, highly recommend take an hour, anyone who's listening, and just go through it. It is absolutely incredible. I'll have it linked below.
Perfect.
How do you help
Thank you.
teams avoid analysis paralysis? So let's say
Yeah,
maybe
that was
even
the
going back.
question. Sorry,
No,
that
no,
was
no.
the question. Yeah.
Your answer was great. Thinking even back to like when you were launching this Kickstarter so many years ago, how do you go from I have this idea, I want to do a million different things to, okay, this is the North Star. These are the things I'm going to do.
Okay, so the objective, right? The critical mission. So the how is, I wouldn't say more intimate part of this, but what I love to do as a founder is just like decide. So there are always opportunities. And your job as a founder is literally to find the opportunities that are the best for your company right now and to act upon them. And the core notion of acting is commitment. So I like to stick with a certain decision for at least like 3 to 6 months. Of course, I could be doing like a bunch of prioritization when it comes to decision making. So what's the best way for me to move forward right now? Should I, for example, launch a book in Spanish? Should I like launch more corporate trainings? There are always like a lot of should-ups, and you can weigh them based on criteria which are important for your business. Like, is it money making? Is it impact? Is it like adoption, the number of users? You can like totally legitimately do a spreadsheet and score them one against the other. But once you make a decision, stick to it for at least a quarter or two, because this is where the beauty happens. I can decide today that I'm going to have like 1 million followers on YouTube. Will I be able to do the rest? Will I be able to generate the knowledge, the intelligence, the right type of team, and like the right type of content in order to pull this off? Yeah, probably not, because I would have to go like super all in for years in order to pull this off. Is that a sacrifice that I'm willing to take? Not right now. So that's exactly the decision-making process that I'm presenting to my teams. Make a decision, stick to it, and give it a fair chance. And whenever we are just like in this analysis paralysis, like who should my ICP be? Should I be doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or something like that? I'm just like, Tess, don't get. I mean, you can spend another month reading books, following blog posts, listening to podcasts. But the only thing that will like literally move the needle in your business is action. So decide, commit, and do the bloody reps in order to make this happen. Sorry if that sounds a little bit harsh, but I see a lot of smart people missing a lot of opportunities because they are unable to commit.
So true. I think just on a philosophical note, I find it fascinating that to dive into something that's a dream, you almost have to let the dream die. As long as you don't take an action, you can imagine like, oh, one day I'm going to blow up and it's going to be incredible. But as soon as you start acting and you find like, oh, my product only got one sale, suddenly your dream is dead. But that's actually a chance to really make the dream come alive in a real way and not just in our dreams.
Nathan, you can gamify that. It doesn't have to be like as harsh, right? You can literally gamify the reps. So for example, if you are building the audience right now, I was observing your YouTube channel growing and I saw like change per change how you iterated on the cover images, right? And
Yeah.
it's all about like doing the work and learning from it and just like putting the critical amounts of reps in, because when you start, you will probably suck. And that's the fact. Like if I decided to just like start some sort of Reddit community hacking right now, I would be awkward right now. I would be like literally identify yourself with name and surname so I can validate if your opinion has valid. But that's not the point of the channel, right? You really, 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 really have to be there, show up on a daily basis. And Alex Hormozy, like literally I get like weirdly hyped when I listen to his podcast, which is like not the thing that I'm most proud of, but works for me. He has the rule of 100. So the rule of 100 is super interesting because every day we can do something in order to get closer to our dreams. For example, I can work out for an hour, but applying this to our business, Like I could be doing 100 cold outreaches. I could be spending 100 minutes on LinkedIn doing value commenting or the quirks that are necessary to succeed these days. You see, there is always something that you can do. So you have to show up and you have to commit and do the reps.
And speaking of that, you mentioned cold outreach. This is an area that
So
I feel like most people highly underestimate. There's so much value in cold outreach still. Can you just share a bit of how you see this working? It's one of your loops, if I'm not wrong. How do you see
yeah,
cold
sure.
outreach working, and what are most people missing when they do it wrong?
Cool. Do you mind if I just explain go-to-market motions really quick? Okay,
Yes,
super.
absolutely.
Super. Thank you. So I defined 7 go-to-market motions. Again, these are scalable and repeatable ways to get customers. The first one is inbound. You creating content and hoping that people will like this content and start engaging with your value system. It can be on social media or on the websites, like with the blog. It can be events for all I care. The second one is paid. So whenever your content doesn't get the reach it deserves, or if you just want to add some rent, you can like totally amplify this equation with just like pouring a little bit money into this makes things a lot faster if that's an option for you. So the third one, which is like very, very, very dear to my heart, is outreach. Outreach, telling people that you exist, that you offer something, hopefully to relevant people in a way that is appealing to them, right? And we will dive into outreach in a sec. But like this is the third way how to get clients. Then you have communities, especially if you have a tech product, it's almost inevitable that you will find your early adopters in tech communities because we are there searching for new tools, like trying to solve our problems, complaining about what's not working at the moment, right? So community is another very important one. Then we have account-based marketing and sales. In very simple words, if I'm selling something which is a little bit more pricey, it's not like me cold outreaching Nate. Hi, Nate. Would you care for some go-to-market action with me? Wink, wink. But I would probably have to deep dive into what you're working on right now, right? And I would have to create like a system of multiple touch points, either on LinkedIn or email or events or something like that, in order to start a meaningful conversation with him and build trust. That takes a longer time than cold outreach, so to go there directly, but it definitely pays off when you are building your way into more complex accounts, when you are selling something more expensive, is simple words. And last but not least, a cool kid on the block, product-led growth. The product-led growth is wonderful. Who wouldn't like that the product would sell itself after a free trial or a freemium model or something like that? The devil lies in details. So you need to do something prior to that because you can just not go and rely that like you will do product led growth if you have no input into your product so that this machinery could speak, right? So these are 7 ways how we can go to market, 7 go to market motions. Now the outreach part is super undervalued. I like to think about this as there are 2 ways how you can get a customer. First, they find you. Second, you find them. And if you want to take control for your business to create a predictable pipeline, it's almost inevitable that you will have to do this. As I was interviewing companies such as Command IE, which was acquired for Amplitude for a lot of money. I don't recall how much, but like Play even, a $1 billion ecosystem, there is a B2B switch child in the moment. And like nearly all the founders that I have been in touch with have been using outreach in early stages. Why? Because when you are small, nobody really cares about you and you cannot really create this magnificent media machine or buy your way into a lot of stuff. So we have to be scrappier. We have to be like a little bit more subversive. Now, the good part is that there is a good and a bad part to outbound. So it's not as undervalued at the moment because the entry barriers with a lot of cool tools out there got ridiculously low. So if my aunt would want to do it, she could. She could figure it out on the internet if the landscape is getting a little bit cluttered. But on the other side, we have a really cool opportunity with data enrichment to do mass personalization at scale. And this is a game changer for me. Because if I go and I pitch to Nate on LinkedIn, let's say that I want, or what would I sell you? AI checklist. I'm sure that you are interested in my AI checklist. I did. So the first pitch that I could be doing like in a very bad thing is, "Hi, Nate, here is my checklist. Would you like to buy it?" It would be like probably immediate block, right? It could get the job done like in a couple of thousand iteration, but like the percentage rate it is not something that I want to count on. And like if I use data enrichment with AI, I could be researching that Nate, for example, has this podcast that he has invited a bunch of very interesting guests. For all I care, I could even enrich this data further and explicitly said that I loved the episode with a specific guest and this was my key takeaway. And just like I wouldn't start selling right away, but it's more likely that Nate will respond towards this pitch than, "Hi, Nate, would you like to buy my checklist?" So yeah, this is how we make things work.
That's incredible. How, like, if someone's aunt wants to get started in cold outreach, what would they do? Where would you recommend they start?
So I'm not affiliated with this type of service, but this is how I love to do it when I'm coaching my teams. I just open Clay. So this is like where the whole magic happens. And it can be Apollo for all I care, but I'm using Clay. So they say that their ICP are B2B marketers that works in manufacturing in the USA. And I'm like, cool. Let's see how many of them are they and how many emails or like postal addresses or phone numbers can we get? And then I open Clay. And within like 8 minutes, I have this list built. It's such a wow moment for them. Then the sending tools are easy. You can just use instantly, for example, right? And this is like not difficult to set up. So find the audience, see like who could potentially be reacting with your offer. Then like the sending part, the technical part, you can figure it out or hire somebody to do that for you. The problem is the offer. So what to pitch? And you cannot really be like, "Hi, do you want to buy my checklist?" So you need to make sure that you are referring to something that is either a pain point in their business or just like the first touch point should just like be to check if they are, I love to say it like alive, meaning if they will respond, if you can like reach to them, right? So usually it's asking a question. Usually it's just like a little bit of a warm intro with some sort of company specific and a little bit flattery can get you far. But yeah, that's the first interaction point that you would have. So it can be beautifully translated on social media as well, because email is a little bit harder to start for the majority of people because psychological barriers, I don't know. Not so many of us are that keen on the idea that on our personal behalf, we would spam thousands of strangers with our offers to see what's happened. But a very good place to start is social media because everybody has LinkedIn profiles these days, right? And given the fact that you have already built like a bunch of trust, a bunch of preference with your LinkedIn activity, hopefully in the past, those people will much more likely respond to your pitch. It would no longer be cold outreach. It would be something which is called warm outreach, but you know what I mean here, right? So selling to people that you semi-know, that you have like previous interaction with. So for example, the easiest place to start without any tools, without any research is literally you exporting or like viewing the people who interacted with your post and try to do this sequence in your DMs. So, okay, like Nate, I see that you like my pricing post. Are you interested in pricing? That would be a bad pitch, but how did you approach pricing in the past? Do you happen to have some issues that were making this hard for you or something like that? Well, this is the easiest way. And I know that I sound horrible, but like I am all the time living in no excuses zone. If we are talking about this, if it is important for you, you will find a way how to do this, right? If it is mission critical, you will find a way. So do it.
What have been some of the best cold outreaches that you've received that you were like, actually, this is something I want. They found their customer. I want to sign up for this.
So the best outreach that I got like in my life was somebody roasting with a video pitch my lead magnet on LinkedIn. So she went And she literally did like a Loom video. I don't remember what it was, but like, okay, so I see that wherever you're sending people from your LinkedIn profile to, this is the landing page. She opened it and she suggested some like concrete action points. How could I improve the opt-ins for emails that I'm generating from LinkedIn? And I was like, wow, this is so me. This is so personalized. This is so cool. The problem with this one is that it works in smaller batches, right? And unless you use some AI tools for like video selling or something like that, this is very difficult to scale. But if you're a small business, for example, this is how you can like X your reply rates. If you just like go and say something valuable to them, something that they care about, because this is what you should be obsessing with. How can you help them? How can you like attract their attention? They don't care about you at that given moment. How to make them care?
I love that piece about obsessing about what they care about. It goes back to what you were saying earlier. You need to solve a pain point. You need to be obsessed with what your users care about. And one other thing that comes at the beginning of go-to-market that can be very challenging for any founder to decide is pricing. You've written about the importance of having a good pricing strategy at the beginning, not spending too much time on it, not pricing too low. How would you recommend starting pricing?
Mm-hmm. So it's funny. This is why I laugh, because I literally was prepping on the pricing workshop that I have with one VC like just 2 hours ago before our call. And I can literally like walk you through the agenda. So the first thing that you should do is just like this mood board of competitors, right? Because as a go-to-market company, you are bounded with either direct competition or competitive alternatives. So there are two measures that you need to understand immediately. How much is competition charges? Because if it is relevant to the ICP, there is no way that they won't compare you against the competition because you're new to market. And the upper side is like, what's the value that you are creating? And that one is a little bit tricky because not in all the products do you have this perfect feedback loop where you can actually measure how much money did my go-to-market strategy were produced for you, right? I don't have this information. People just say thank you. But the thing is that we need to, just like in ideal scenario, if we can find a proxy of the value added that we are creating, we can like capture 20 to 30% of the added value. And this is so easy to do if you are like transacting directly, meaning that like if you're a payment mechanism, like if you're a Stripe or PayPal or something like that, you just charge a fixed fee percentage, and this is how you rock and roll. This is perfect. Now, if we are further away from the value transfer, from the actual transaction, we have to use proxies. So, for example, I like to do this type of pricing in my line of business based on just like alternative pricing, and the number of revenue that they could be making with this amplification, right? So
Yeah.
I envision that if we work together, then you can X your business, hypothetically. So I could be like transacting with this type of value that was being created as a surplus, and I could be first projecting a certain percentage that I want to capture here, or I could be like literally benchmarking myself against the competitive alternatives. And if you are working on an AI product, this is hugely important, especially for AI agents, because we are more likely to being compared against like outsourcing labor or consultants or like do it yourself, like the cost of the labor, than with other like alternatives. For example, if we are developing an AI agent that will do sales development for us, like SDR, they will be benchmarked against how much would a human cost or how much would it cost me to just like outsource this type of activity, right? And that is kind of an unseen surplus in SaaS. And what is cool about the agents is that they are self-improving. So as the product is getting better, we could hypothetically always capture more value added. Sorry, you got me like really, really, really hardcore about the pricing. I don't know if you're still interested in this discussion. I'm still
Yes.
explaining value capturing here. But yeah, for the AI agents, this is super, super, super important to understand, to do the like competitive alternative benchmarks and to set yourself in the spectrum. So if I choose to ignore this problem or like do something myself in ChatGPT or Gemini, for example, it would cost me $0. Then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you have very expensive consultants, like people who will charge you 20K, 30 per month in order to do this with you, right? So where on this spectrum do I sit? Objectively, based on value added that I'm bringing to my customers, once I figure that out, like usually in SaaS pricing, we can capture 20 or 30% of that added value. And that's the first thing that I do with any given team. If it is too complicated, I just like to start with make it like in the range 10 to 30% competitors, relevant competitors related, and figure it out later once you have more data. Everything else fails, we can still do like benchmarking for competitors.
That is fair. And you don't want to spend too much time figuring out the perfect price when you have 0 customers. First get those.
I would prefer that time to be spent on ICP.
Another concept as you're building a company, you're finding this product market fit that you've talked about is the difference between initial proof and scientific proof. How does that fit into product market fit as you would recommend people think about it?
So it's like double experimentation loop, right? And if it is easier for you, you can just like kind of envision it as this normal growth cycle by Sean Ellis and call it inception. But like inception happens in many different stages. So I was working with a founder once and we were brainstorming, and his idea was our story should be a Netflix documentary. And everybody was like, what? But that was his vision, right? That was his initial big story, like big vision. So, okay, in normal operational work, this might or may not happen. But how I like to just like do it in a more actionable perspective. So first, data analysis, right? You can learn a bunch from just like seeing your data. Then I'm getting like sometimes critique that I'm a little bit too obsessed with competition monitoring, but I'm a very competitive person and I like to know what is going on in my competition arena. That drives me. That's very good for me to inset. So there is this competition intelligence that I personally kind of am obsessed with. So that's always something that I am double downing onto. But then like what else do you have are just like these proprietary market insights, right? With big changes that are going on AI, like every day I feel 5 years older. Like seriously, it's so difficult to keep up and just like seeing what is going on in other industries, trying to apply whatever is going on. So here is like a graceful exercise of like you maintaining the focus and being aligned with your business vision. It's messy, but we have to do this. And nevertheless, I love talking to my customers. Remember the story from Grant from Tela before? He went on a call with every single paying customers. I love to do the same. So whenever I don't know why my landing pages are not converting as they should be, I just like go on 5 calls and there is such an amazing opportunity that I will figure this out. Because whenever we are talking about just like this user testing or something like that, first thing is that I personally hate to outsource this, right? Because this is the problem that I need to feel. Like I need to see their faces being disappointed, being confused, being underwhelmed with this customer experience that we have created. I want to experience this on emotional level as well. And whereas AIs can transcript our conversation beautifully and do the admin work like of clustering and analyzing it, I will never, ever, ever forget a user who's confused and doesn't know where to click and me like shouting inside me like, this is how you make it happen. But you cannot really tell this. So this is the initial inception, right? How we find ideas for whatever we think we should do in go-to-market. These are our figments of imagination. Please still for a little bit data or research backup insights. And then we have the real experimentation method. So this is you testing stuff using same old method than Francis Bacon did back in the 19th century. So this is like very difficult for go-to-market teams without like enough traction, right? Whenever I say test your positioning, test your messaging or something like that, people sadly discover that maybe their website has 50 visitors per day or something like that. And they cannot really run split tests on the website. But no excuses zone. You can still do split testing in advertising. You can still like invest a couple of $500 to $2,000 for the sake of the argument in order to learn what should your best positioning be, to test a couple of those headlines that you had in mind. This is super important because, okay, I can tell you the story about this later on. So like you can do the testing in ads, then you can do it in outreach. So for example, I could be sending 5 different variations of LinkedIn requests at every given time, or cold outreach emails, or I can even test it anecdotally. When I'm doing my sales meetings and observing Nate's face, where does he lead up? What got him confused? What got him excited? Like, where are the seats? Where are the good parts of this conversation? This is what I'm searching for, and this is what I want to double down on. So this is approximately how I see the double-sided experimentation loop. So you start with inception, and then you have to verify it on whatever you made up in the previous part, preferably using statistically significant.
That's incredible. No excuses. No matter how small, there's a way to start to figure this out.
There's always a way. There's always a way. Like I'm telling you, like never give up, and like you can always figure it out in iterations. So resilience is the most undervalued trait when it comes to go to market. You will fail a lot. Deal with it, learn from it, go further, do not give up.
That is so true. I've noticed that just in life in general and also in marketing, that the ability to handle failure and keep going is key to getting everything you want to achieve. When you think about early signs of product market fit, and maybe let's take clay as an interesting example, what are the earliest signs of life that you would expect to see in a product like clay that tell you you're sort of on the right track?
Okay, super. So product market fit as defined by Brian Balfour and a lot of like cool research guys, like the best way how to measure it is with retention, right? But before we can observe retention, there are a couple of other methods that we could be using. So Sean Ellis suggests this test like product market fit test. When you ask your users, how would you be disappointed if this product was no longer existing? Never in my life have I asked the customer these questions directly because I don't want to cause panic. I mean, it is just like my personal preference somehow. Like, how can I randomly ask a person, okay, how sad would you be if I no longer send you this stack or something like that? So I never find it like very directly applicable. The signals that I am like more prone is early sign of just like activation. So are they experiencing the wow moment? Are they delighted by the product? Do their lives lead up? Are they inviting other people to the product? Do they give us like positive social proof? These are like the early sparkles that I'm searching for a product. And what is happening like in one of my AI products was really cool. So I built like this, it was a chatbot. It was not like a legit AI agent, but basically I put it all my like knowledge assets there and I trained this in order to answer questions or go to market. It was just an internet build, not an end product, but I needed to just like learn how the community is interacting with AI products. So I launched it and only once did I share the link, like a very bad chat-based link in my Substack and on LinkedIn. And then I forgot about this. So I initially was only interested in how many registrations could we generate. Like in a couple of days, we got 600, 700, I don't know. A couple of days after, users started to complain that the chatbot is no longer working. And I was panicking in my office. Like, seriously, what is wrong? Is the service down? We pay premium subscription. What I learned is that they used all the credits. So people were using it so much that the monthly amount of credits that I was, let's say, comfortable paying with for that was like my budget, my mental budget for that was used in a couple of days. And this is where I went, like, we might be onto something like that because people are really engaging. And this is a product that I don't want to continue develop because I don't think that these like chat interfaces, GPTs are the future of AI products. But it was a very, very, very good signal that yes, product did deliver value to those users that burned all the credits that were assigned monthly in a couple of days. That was a good sign.
I love that they basically did the survey themselves. The product was taken away
Yes.
and they came to you and said, please give it back.
Hey, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
That is incredible. How do you structure tests to get quick results? So let's say you have more than 50 visitors a day on your website. You're starting to get some traction. You can actually run an experiment. How do you tactically become Francis Bacon? And for anyone who isn't familiar with Francis Bacon was one of the earliest scientists to use the scientific method, which is basically what we're still using today. Absolutely incredibly. How would you structure an experiment?
Yeah. Let's be as specific as possible. So this experiment is something that probably your audience will love because it like literally involves the headline on the website. How do you present your product, right? In those 5 critical seconds, do we get them or do we lose them? This matters so much. And my first idea of it as being like a typical geekish founder than I am was that I should write from overwhelmed to hyper focused. I thought that the cool methodology, go-to-market methodology, could best be described with this nebulous statement of from overwhelmed to hyper-focused. I thought that it captures the state of mind and heart of my founder beautifully. I even went that far that I named a couple of my early keynotes from overwhelmed to hyper-focused. But then pragmatically, if we really ask ourselves what on earth does this mean, a lot of things to a lot of different people. Unfortunately, I had to spend a couple of $1,000s in order to learn that. So here is a split test that we ran with Meta Ads. It was the same creative, and we tested like this from overwhelmed to hyper focus, my genius idea, against something that my, let's say, funnel guy suggests, right? So he was like, Mara, you should be communicating clear USPs, clear UVPs. What's your promise? What's in it for the customers? Why should I care? I was like, from overwhelmed to hyper focus. This is how they want to feel. And he was like, no, reach profitable traction in 14 days. And when we did a split test, one against the other, my failed miserably. Like, the third on investment was so bad. It was negative. It was negative. And his became like a hero tagline that we use like up these days, right? Because thinking back, it makes so much sense. But me as a founder, I was so stubborn that I literally had to run the split test against myself.
Love how so often to find the thing that really works, we have to take our ego and set it aside and actually run the experiment and see, is the thing I think good actually going to be good?
So we can be more hyper-focused.
I love that. And interesting how you took something where maybe you didn't have enough traffic to test it or A/B test it on the website,
No.
but by running ads,
Top
you
of the
could
funnel.
quickly get an answer and then go back and change website to whatever works.
Yeah.
That's
Just
incredible.
what we need to make sure is that we are just like observing one variable at a time, right? So with ads, we are not like we only test it for taglines to just like challenge our positioning hypothesis. If I just like placed Nate on one ad creative and Maya on the other one, I would learn something different, not that.
Yes, which is such a really important point for anyone who's maybe not doing this sort of science every day. It's very tempting, I find, to want to test 3 things at once or 4 things at once because there's so many things you want to experiment with. But it comes back to Francis Bacon and science. You have to test slowly so that you actually can identify what is true rather than knowing like, well, this group of things works better and this group of things works worse. But I don't know which of the things in that group actually is the attributable factor. So sometimes slower.
And Nate, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for interrupt. I'm a horrible person for doing that. I really wanted to give something tangible to our audience, right? So what should be testing with first? One of the biggest bets that you can have like this year is social proof, because the rest of the video materials could be manufactured with AI. And if you have just like customer testimonials recorded on some event, or if you can like get somebody to enthusiastically present your product for you, this will create so much more trust. So that would be the first thing that I will test.
Maya, this has been absolutely incredible. I think everyone listening, this is like getting an MBA in go-to-market in 1 hour. What would you say is the stage at which someone should say, okay, I'm breaking out of this initial phase. I need to start leveling up my growth versus I can still focus on one channel and just go really deep in that one channel?
So the first thing would be if you see diminishing returns on the prime channel. For example, if you have exhausted like advertising or LinkedIn organic or whatever was your like go-to-market motion, if you see diminishing returns, I would be very, very, very diligently testing new go-to-market motions so that I can find my next champion or something that will work in synergy with the existing moneymaker in order to make this happen. The second one is very natural. As you are introducing new products to the market, you might be unlocking different personas, different price points that will require different go-to-market motions. So, for example, the way how we are doing the selling, I can sell like a $100 checklist with direct, like with inbound, with ads and something like that. But if I want to sell Corpo, I would never probably sell this with ads. Okay. So it's a differently required go-to-market motion because I have expanded upon my offer. And the rest is up to your ambition, if I'm honest, and just like your ability to pull this off. Whenever you are opening new go-to-market motions and doing like more things at the time, I would naturally gravitate towards somebody who has done this before. So when I'm searching for experts for my company who should like be doing this type of work with me, I'm just like, who has done something that I really want to do? That's my go-to. And at this stage, I don't care how much will I pay them in order to, okay, I do care obviously from practical reasons, but I'm very price insensitive when it comes to that because the only thing that I'm caring about is to like literally reduce the learning curve. So if I want to do outbound right now, I could be doing this myself, right? I could watch a bunch of tutorials. Clay has an excellent university. There are a bunch of influencers who sell this stuff, and I could be DIYing this. If I don't have the budget, I will be doing DIYing this, and it will take some time. Now, the next critical question is, can I reduce this time in order to get to suck less at it sooner? That's literally it, right? In order to validate it sooner. And this is what I would be prioritizing if I would be opening a new go-to-market motion right now, just like respecting the delicate dynamics of when people usually start something with their existing knowledge and resources, it's probably like a very weird learning curve.
Such a good point. If I'm a head of marketing and I want to open a new channel for my company, I should probably hire someone who already knows it, not try to learn it myself or have someone on my team learn this thing for the first time. That brings us to the end. But before we end, I do have a special segment, a lightning round. So I'll throw out some this or that questions. Feel free to answer with your gut, or you're welcome to go into detail also, but just don't feel a need. The first question is customer interviews or A/B tests.
I get all the best A/B testing ideas from customer interviews. So I never stop doing customer interviews. Whenever I ran out of the ideas or inspiration, I would just like open up my calendar and I would talk with 10 to 20 people.
That makes a lot of sense. MVP or fully featured launch?
For AI product, I call it perfect enough. So if I'm launching my shitty MVPs, I cannot really give them a fair fighting chance, right? Because people will never like really retain to them or they will lose the credits too soon. But nevertheless, I am very surgical about what is like this unit of value delivery that will be satisfactory for the users. So while I like scrapey and like half working products a lot, not everybody does. So we need to meet this criteria.
Data-driven or intuition-driven decision-making?
I think I'm somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. I love being data-driven, but like inception is for me so important and it happens in such awkward manners, like when I'm talking with people working on field, watching my anime series, whatever, it's weird.
Agency partners or in-house teams?
Depends. Like seriously, there is not a single best answer.
And last one, self-service or high-touch onboarding?
When you start, you will learn a lot from high-touch onboarding, especially if you are launching an AI product, because there is like this huge asymmetry between your knowledge of AI and their knowledge of AI, like the customers. And sometimes we even go in with some sort of workshops with educational products so that everybody gets on the same page, right? So again, like whenever we have this knowledge gap or like experience gap, let's make sure with pricing that we can afford this longer onboarding process, which will probably be.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. where can people go to learn more about you?
Yeah, thank you, Nate, so much. This is such an awesome conversation. Hopefully, your audience, your podcast listeners, will love it as well. And if you would like to continue this conversation, I am obnoxious on LinkedIn at Maja Voje. So this is my channel that I use the most for communication. Then I have this wonderful Substack. This is really like I'm working 10 hours a week in order to produce these articles. So it's knowledge gtmstrategies.com. We will, of course, link everything into the show notes because Nate is an awesome human being. And last but not least, if you want to talk, just like real talk, if you have like a question in business, if something that I said today did not compute or is like not logical in according to what you're doing and what your experience in business, I always appreciate good opposition because this is how we learn. And yeah, my email is grow@majavoje.com. If you have any sort of, let's say, more substantial feedback on what we discussed today. And that's pretty much it from my side. If you are as obsessed with AI as I am, I invented a checklist, go-to-market checklist, 100 items that will literally get you to this go-to-market fit faster than anything, because I invented 84 prompts that will help you do these tests, right? So these are my best-selling workshops, frameworks, as well as examples, and I prompted the shit out of everything so you can implement it sooner.
These are some truly incredible resources. So do check that out in the show notes. And Maja, thank you for coming on the show. What a delightful time.
Nate, you're such a wonderful host. I think that I'm so early to the podcast, and probably this will be like referenced again and again and again, but I do believe that you're building a great thing here. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.